if anyone knows, perhaps, who was the last individual, the last person to bring Ketorets, to burn Ketorets to Hashem. So you're thinking, okay, well, second base of Mikdash, I don't know, before the Churban, Roman era, Judea, you're thinking about perhaps, who knows what happened. If you're a real scholar, Elephantine Island, your mind might run crazy. It's a distinct possibility that, in fact, the last person to bring Ketorets to Hashem is or was an individual named Vendel Jones. If you know who he is, he was convenient for the world of antiquities because he could do things the Israeli government would not let anyone else do, and they did, and they never let him do it. He did it on his own with their tacit unapproval. And in his adventures excavating Har HaBayis and other holy places, he encountered many interesting things, including a trove under Har HaBayis of what seemed to be actual Bayis Sheni, Second Temple incense, the Ketorets. And I'm not sure what you would do with it, but he did a very sensible thing. Vendel Jones took some back with him to America, and on his ranch in Texas, he found some quiet corner of his property with apparently trees in the area, a very quiet area. He built a very, very hot fire, got some glowing hot coals, and in some measure dropped this powder he found, this delicious smelling incense powder he found under Har HaBayis, kind of a reddish powder. He dropped it onto these coals. And he says, there are a few interviews he did where he mentions this. A friend of mine knows one of his daughters. His kids converted to Judaism. He himself was a Ben Noach. They say that
his father was Jewish.
Really?
I think so.
Yeah, right. The reference to the Indiana Jones, inspired by him, perhaps. The Ketorets, he said, smelled heavenly. That it was an incredible smell, and more than that, maybe that's to be expected. But he says that he would go when he went back to that spot in the woods. A week, I think even 2 weeks later, that spot in the woods still smelled of Ketorets from that one day, that one offering.
There's space there by the table.
He's not Jewish, so for him, he has the ability to do this with far fewer consequences, perhaps. He reports that area of the woods, those trees, the smell lingered in that area for weeks. Now, people here, seem amazed, their eyes got wide. I'm not impressed. Why not? There's a Mishnah in Talmud, in the third parak. It's brought in the Gemara in Yoma, which says that Rabbi Yosef ben Karcha once met a Yid, a Jew, who lived near Shiloh, where the Mishkan stood for 370-ish years. And in those days, Ketorets was brought every single day. This Jew told Rabbi Yosef ben Karcha that the area near the Mishkan still smells like Ketorets. This took place, by the way. Rabbi Yosef ben Karcha was a Talmud of Rabbi Akiva. This story took place in the 100s of the Christian era. The area still smelled like Ketorets. That same Mishnah goes on and tells us that Rabbi Eliezer ben Digloi, who's a Tana, he says that his father had goats in the Har Michvar, in the mountains of Michvar, which is Me'ever Yarden. It's in modern-day Jordan, on the mountains across from the Dead Sea. The area of Michvar was where his father had a flock of goats. They would smell the Ketorets. In the time of the base of Mikdash, they would smell the smell of the Ketorets from the base Kodesh, the Heichal building in the base of Mikdash, and they would sneeze. The goats would be brought to a sneeze. The west wind would bring it there and make his father's goats sneeze. What does that mean? So, what does that mean that the goats sneezed? And that's the first question. The second question pertains to the number of ingredients in the Ketorets. The number 11 is very, very curious. That the number 10 I think we all know from Adventures in Judaism, 10 is a number of shlemus, right? Like there are 10 zones in Eretz Yisrael. Walled cities, etc., the Harbayas, the Chel, there are 10 zones, concentric more or less, zones of Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. For instance, I'll summarize very, very crudely what the Sfas Emes says, Al Derech the Maharal. I'll say it twice, I'll say it slowly. The 10 Makos, the 10 plagues in Egypt, transformed the holiness of the 10 Mamaras of creation, the 10 utterances of creation, into the 10 Dibros, the 10 commandments of Matan Torah. The 10 plagues turned the 10 utterances of creation into the 10 Mamaros of the Aseret Dibros. It's a very, very key thing. I mean, elsewhere in
This is the Maharal?
it's the Sfas Emes, Al Derech the Maharal. And I'm summarizing very, 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 very crudely, but even in Halacha, we find that in the Gemara in Shabbos, there's what's called Sidur de Pas. From field to table, bread takes 10 steps to make. Right? And the Beis Yosef, etc., the post can bring, therefore there's an Indian to hold the bread with 10 fingers. When you make a motzi, you hold the bread with all 10 fingers. 10 is, I could go on for, I'd be here all night. 10 is a big, big, big number. And therefore, if the Ketorets has 11 ingredients, it's a very curious thing which requires explanation. And as long as we're discussing fingers and touching bread and this, my agenda tonight, briefly in this talk, is to push upon everyone here in minhag that when we say the Ketorets, when we learn, we say the Ketuvah Ketorets in davening, or minhag Provence was to say it after Havdalah. It's a very holy thing with many, many properties we'll discuss soon. There's a minhag tzaddikim to count with one's fingers the ingredients. To count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 11 with one's fingers. I think the Rabbi did this, but many tzaddikim of all brands, all backgrounds, all types.
You can't count it with your fingers.
Mm-hmm. And you have one extra
And what? And one toe?
And one extra finger. But this goes back to the question of 10 as a mispar klalis, as a unifying macro form concept of 10 in all creation. And that why would there be a thing as holy as Ketorets with 11 ingredients? And
It's like 7 and 8. It's like 7 and 8.
It's like 7 and 8, but it's the same but different. We'll get there very soon. And to begin, the Arizal explains, and really all the Sfarim talk about this, that with korbanos in general, the ikar, the essence of a korban is its smell. That the reich nichoach, that which goes up, that as the thing, the menachos, the animal is incinerated upon a mizbeach, what is left behind, what's elevated, which is not part of the actual animal itself, but is released by the fire, is the smell. And then the Gemara says in Brachos that a smell is that which the neshama itself, the neshima, the breath of a person, takes in as a joy. And therefore, if a person smells something, it's a very, very deep thing. You're smelling a released essence from something, which is not part of its etzem object. The Arizal points out that in the very first sin, the sin of Adam and Chava in Gan Eden, smell was the one sense which was never involved. They heard the nachash, they saw the fruit, they touched the fruit, they ate the fruit, they tasted it, etc. They never engaged the sense of smell. So of the 5 senses, smell was never punished. It was never party to the sin, and therefore it was never punished and never downgraded. So primordial humanity had enhanced senses. You can't even imagine what that means. Our sense of smell, humanity inherits this very day a sense of smell which is enhanced. In neuroscience we know that smells trigger memory. It's a whole Torah, which is not for now, but the power of smell is above and beyond that which we engage in our other senses. And to this extent, this relates to the Ketorets in particular, because this is the one korban, the one offering to Hashem, which is essentially for the smell and nothing else. There is no animal. The spices are for smell, and they're burned for smell. To this extent, a very, very interesting thing. There's a Mishnah in Talmud in the second parak, where it says that in the morning, when they would build a bonfire from which to take coals to burn the incense, they would be mevarer Atse te'ena yofin. They would be mevarer, nice logs of fig wood. Why fig wood? So the Mefarshim on the Mishnah say fig wood burns really smooth. It burns hot and clean. There's not a lot of smoke. It's extremely, extremely hot when it's hot, and therefore, to place Ketorets on it, it ensures the most efficient, most smokeless, enjoyable burning possible.
So you could destroy fig trees.
Yes, and it's important because the Mishnah that we learn elsewhere in Talmud and Midos that grapevines and olive trees should not be used for the bonfire wood on the Mizbeach, because they're Eretz Yisrael. I could tell a story there, but this we are mahar. We look after. We want fig. Rashi.
Is there a reason why olive wood wouldn't be used?
Yeah, so the Mefarshim on the Mishnah explained that they are special to Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael, grapes and olives are like staples of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. So to burn those trees, even if they're dead and they're collected in a sustainable
Well, you're not supposed
way.
to destroy any fruit trees.
No, but I'm saying for wood, maybe you could, even in battle. You see in this shir there before Shem, it's a Gemara, the whole discussion that the wanton destruction is one thing. But to get back to this sugya in Zvachim, this Mishnah is brought, and on Zvachim, Rashi there explains this Mishnah. He says, why do they want fig? It's not a technical need for a hot coal. They bring the fig because the clothing which Adam and Chava made after the Avera came from a fig tree. It's a very mysterious Rashi. What's Rashi getting at? We're discussing the Ketorets.
The expression fig leaf has been famous ever since.
And therefore the Gemara in Brachos, Daf Mem, Rabbi Nehemiah there says, if Adam and Chava made their clothing in haste, in their humiliation, from a fig leaf, we learn from that it must have been the fig itself which was the offending fruit. That the fruit in question was in fact a fig. And why would they make their clothing from the fig? Because from that which causes the sin comes the tikkun. It's a very, very big principle which is going to be part and parcel of everything I'm saying. If not beferish, certainly it's beremes with all which follows tonight in what I'm going to tell you. And therefore, the experience of bringing Ketorets every single day is to confront sin, to confront evil, the nachash at its root. And the avoda of Ketorets in all of its aspects pertains to confronting the demonic. I have to read this out.
Confronting the demonic?
Demonic. Don't worry, we're going to get there. All of it. The Zohar tells us, I have to read it in Aramaic, I don't have enough light here. Kagav da Ketorets. What's Ketorets? Kol man ta'arif ahu tananan. Anyone who smells the Ketorets. I'm jealous of the kahuna. I mean, you can smell it in outside the mikdash also, but it's a smell which, for anyone who smells it, says the Zohar, if you would smell how it smells when it departs the coal and the essence of that incense rises above the fire, have a mevarer libe. It will correct. It'll purify your heart. It'll give you a desire to serve a Kadosh Baruch Hu with purity. Zuma, the Yetzer Hara, and it will remove from you the impurity of Yetzer Hara, of the evil inclination. V'lo hava le elaliba chada, and it'll leave behind within you a unified heart, a heart directed solely to Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Kabbalah Avur, the Dishmayat, to receive what Hashem wants to give you. Begin to Ketorets, Tivru the Yetzer Hara. The Ketorets shatters, destroys Yetzer Hara. Iu vadai b'chol sitrin, in all ways, in all of its facets. The tzitz have a koyim al nisa, just like the big kahuna for the Kohen Gadol, the high level vestments of the Kohen Gadol were miraculous. Uf Ketorets, so too was Ketorets miraculous. The lace lach mila ba'alma, the misvele sitra achra, and there is no other tool in the universe to crush the force of the demonic aspect of the world, the sitra achra, except for bar Ketorets, except for Ketorets. And so we can imagine, I'm just to bring this all down, just like Lamaisa. practically every single day in the base of Mikdash. When an ordinary Kohen would win a lottery in the morning to be the Kohen to bring the Ketorets, and it was a one-time thing because it made you rich. We'll discuss that later. The Kohen would have the schus of getting the coals from the Mikdash Mizbeach, where in the southwest corner was that big wood bonfire already glowing hot, to take coals in the shovel, to go down the Mizbeach, to go up the stairs into that main Heichal. If you've ever seen the Mikdash, models, pictures, the Heichal building is that middle main attraction building. Up the stairs, it was so holy, right? And the Rambam paskins this l'halacha from the Chazal, that there was a mitzvah every single day, twice a day, when the Ketorets was brought, that no one was allowed to be inside the Heichal building with the Kohen bringing the Ketorets. It was a full evacuation. Not only that, you couldn't be on the stairs. The entire Am in the Azara had to fall back behind the Mizbeach. There's an imaginary line on the face of the Mizbeach through the entire Azara. Any humans in the Azara, even Malachim, the Gemara implies, even angels, could not be with the Kohen. He had to be totally alone. It was an avoda of incredible sanctity and kedusha, which was a private affair for that one Kohen.
It could be any Kohen?
Any given day, yeah, there's a lottery. On Yom Kippur, there's a mitzvah for the Kohen Gadol to do every single avoda.
But outside of Yom Kippur,
Outside of
anybody
Kippur, the
who
Kohen
won
Gadol
that?
has his volition is such that he can choose any avoda he wants and bump out the winner of the lottery. But on any given day, there was a lottery for the different avodos, and a different Kohen would win every day. The Ketorets. It was a one-time thing. The Gemara tells us, and so the question is what is this? What is this? I mean, and this is like a very mysterious, very deep thing. What's the shorish of Ketorets? What does Ketorets mean? So the Targum Yonason and the Mukubalim, the Ramak and or Nerav and in Sefer Pardes, all these Mukubalim. I just give you a laundry list, but it's kind of short. Ketores, the shorish is katar, which means in Aramaic, it's an old Semitic root, which means kesher. Kesher and katar are the same root essentially in this mahalach, which means connection. Kesher, like a knot. A pasuk in Yechezkel refers to chatzeros keturos, that there's like in the Mikdash there are connected courtyards. Yeah, the Mishnah has a different parish, but the Mefarshim there explain pshat like that. The union of kesher is to bind, to connect the soul with its kedusha, to bind the neshama with the light of creation, Elokus itself, right? Just for background, the country in the Middle East here called Qatar. What does Qatar mean? Qatar is the same shoresh. Qatar, the country Qatar, comes from Keter. Keter is a caravan, a camel train. When you link up camels and they follow in a straight line, the camels are connected. So a Keter, so Qatar was a place where caravans, a Keter would go. In English, for instance, we have the word nectar, which is a Greek word. What does nectar mean in Greek? Nothing. Nectar is a Semitic loanword from the same shoresh as Ketorets. Nectar basmanazem means like fruity, sweet, like the Israeli, drinks. But in classical Greek, it meant like an aromatic drink. The aroma of Ketorets, Keter, nectar. And anyway, so the point of all this, like I'm trying to tell you, is that the kedusha of the Ketorets binds the neshama. And the question is, what does it have to do with the 11 ingredients? And so, as I said before, the 11 pertains to the demonic. It's a word that we don't use a lot in Jewish circles because it is shocking, and that's the point. The avoda of Yom Kippur, which we mentioned before, when the Ketorets was not just brought on the Mizbeach in the Kodesh, in the front hall, or the inner hall, the middle hall of the Heichal building, but rather on Yom Kippur, Ketorets was brought in, ground extra fine into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and left there to burn. And while it was burning, what was a major avoda? While the Ketorets was burning in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the room where one person can enter one time a year to do one avoda, the Kohen Gadol enters the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the inner sanctum of the Beis HaMikdash, one day a year to do one thing, which is Ketorets. While that Ketorets is smoking and filling the Kodesh HaKadoshim with smoke, with incense, with all of this, what's going on outside? A signature avoda of the Yom Kippur was that a scapegoat, the Seir La'azazel, was dispatched to the Eretz Gezerah to be shoved off a mountain to be killed. The Ramban on Achrei Mos explains that what we're doing in this avoda, in this korban, as it were, of sorts, is we are paying the demonic forces of the universe. That one day a year, the Eibishter, Hashem Yisbarach, who is everything and all which is, gives us the distinction to deliver the paycheck to the Sitra Achra, to the forces of demonic energy in the universe. That if it receives its life force from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that life force is directed by way of the soul of the goat, which is sent to Azazel and thrown off the mountain somewhere outside Malar's meeting, probably, as mine is that. And that avoda is linked, is mekushar directly with the Ketorets. And I'll explain that we know on a deeper level, all which we said about the 10 spheros pertains to the number 10 in general, pertains to the 10 spheros. The 10 divine hypostases, the Elokus, as we perceive it, manifest in the unfolding of reality, in the various worlds and preeminent realities which God creates every single second. And in this scheme, there are 10 spheros. And for this reason, the world is created with 10 mamaros, right? That every maimar of creation, every utterance of creation reflects the kedusha of a sphera. And not only that, but the base of Mikdash, a person himself is an olam katan, and the Tanchuma Pikude says that every person is built in microcosm according to the macrocosmos, the macrocosmic order of the universe. So therefore, within all of us is an internal workup of 10 forces of the soul. There are 10 spheros, so to speak, within us as 10 kochos hanefesh. And that's why, to bring out these forces in humanity, there are 10 generations, the Mishnah tells us, from Adam to Noach, to bring out this force in non-Jews, and then to create Klal Yisrael, for there to be a Ma'aseh Bereshis again in humanity. There's yet another 10 generations from Noach until Avram Avinu. And all this is to explain that the 10 is all which is. Now, in Kabbalah, if you learn deeper Svarim, there are 5 partsufim. Yeah, there are 5 partsufim. It says in Eitz Chaim, in Shartan Ta, that there are 5 partsufim, right? How do you make a hay? Says the Arizal, it's a Dalet and a Vav, which is actually a 10. The 10 pervades and subsumes everything. And the Kedusha, I mean, it's almost endless. In the base of Mikdash, there are 10 menorahs. The pasuk in Divrei Yamim, there is 10 menorahs. The Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael, we said before, is 10 zones. Everything reflects this preeminent Kedusha. And that's why it says in Sefer Yetzirah, whenever there's 10, it's 10. 10 and not 11, 10 below Achadazar, 10 below Tesha. It's always 10. 10, not 11, 10, not 9. Whenever it's not 10, you have a deficiency. Even if it's more than 10, it's a deficiency. And therefore, if the Ketorets have, again, 11, we're speaking about something which bucks, which challenges the natural order of the universe. And therefore, the approach to this, which I've heard from Moshe Wolfson, from Api Rishonim and Achronim, amongst the Mukubalim, is that whenever there's an 11th, it means there's a 10 system, 10 spheros, powers of the soul, 10 points of creation, all which 10 is. And there's an extraneous 11th force, right? So what is that 11th force? So let's say I have in my sukkah lights that are in a chain, sukkah lights we call them. So there's the 10 lights of this chain of lights, which make a full circuit. But if I have no power, there's no light. They're lined up, and that's great, and they're ready to go. The bulbs are all working fine, but without plugging in that chain, there's no energy to light up those 10 lights. The energy inside that wire is, so to speak, the 11th force. That's the 11th. When the 11th is integrated, in other words, when the power flows out of the outlet into my cord, through the 10 lights light up perfectly, and it's one beautiful system. If, however, there's any problem with the power, there's now energy from the wall going through the system. The bulbs are all broken, whatever the problem is, and now I have 11. I have a system with 11 distinct parts. The fact that they don't work now and there's a dysfunction means that instead of having 10 with a 10th which brings them life, I now have 10 with a 10th which adds nothing. And therefore, even though you would think that 10 plus 1 is more, 10 spheres plus 1 is even more elikus, and it can be, but if the 10 don't function, then it means that the extra 1 is extraneous and drags the whole system into dysfunction and evil. And therefore, 11 is always a force of demonic, because it's an extra factor. And therefore, we see this everywhere. Suffice a few examples. For instance, in the Mishkan, if you back to Parshas Truma, right? The roof of the Mishkan. There are basically three roofs. The top of the Tachash, we'll leave that for now. The bottom roof was woven. It was woven argamon thread with designs, etc., with gold clasps. The middle roof, right, was made of goat skin, goat hair. The bottom roof had 10 sections, 5 and 5 put together with clasps. Makes sense. 10 sections, Mishkan, 10. It wins. And the goat layer, however, the black, dark-skinned goat layer above that layer had 11 sections. It has 10 plus 1 in a 5 and 6 array. And this is not by accident. It says in the Sfarim that the Seir is a goat. Gediyah, the urios of the goat hair are made from seir. A seir is a goat, right? A seir is also a term for a demon. Many pesukim will get there soon. A seir is a demon and a goat. In Greek mythology, what do you call a goat demon?
Satyr.
A satyr. What does satyr mean in Greek?
It's like half goat, half man.
What does it literally mean? Unclear. It's probably a Semitic loan word. Satyr comes from seir, which means goat and also demon. The Chesed of Rome in Mayan Zion, Nahar Yud Daled, he explains there that seirim are demons who, when revealed to human eyes, appear like goats. And that the essence of goats, whether it's the seir la'azazel, the seir hamishtalech, which is given as whose soul becomes food for the demonic side of reality on Yom Kippur, or it's the seirim demons. Seir, goat, the essence of a goat is tied inherently to the demonic realm. And Pesukim galore that the Seirim Yiraktu Sham in Shaya, I'll read a pasuk out loud. Hamev Yovin. The Seir al Re'ehu Yikara, Achsham Hargia Lilis, Umasola Manoyach. And this is very, 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 very deep, very, very, very demonic stuff. But nonetheless, that Pesukim in Chumash, Od El Es Zivchehem L'Seirim. You shouldn't bring offerings to demons. The word Seir means goat, and the word Seir also means demonic. It means demon. And these appear with Yom Ben Nevat. I can go on forever, Pesukim galore. But the union of goat, demon, Seir relates to the word for hair. How do you say hair in Hebrew? Zar. It's the same three letters, sin, ayin, and resh. That a goat is hairy, right? Part of what makes a goat is kind of its hair scheme. The seir, the aspect of demonic energy in hair, is a major topic in Kabbalah. Hair is dead. Hair is alive at the root, and then it dies right away. Its chiyus, its life force gets sucked away, so that our hair is dead. It's a dead protein strain. You can cut the hair, you don't bleed, you don't feel anything, it goes back. Hair is totally extraneous. And that's why there's so many halachos and minhagim which pertain to hair, how we grow hair. Some hair is remedial, some hair has mixed tikkunim, some hair has to be destroyed, etc. Hair is a nazirus. Hair is a major deal in Judaism, in the Torah. And even for non-Jews, many of our conventions are things which even non-Jews understand fundamentally. And that is that the power of hair relates to a kedusha, which is inherently tied to evil. Because like the workup of 10 within all of us, our hair is like the 11th. It's like extra. It doesn't quite. It's above and it's a makif. It's above and beyond us. And if not integrated, it can do more damage than good, perhaps. And therefore, as regards to this, we know that
As opposed to your fingernails?
Similar thing. Also, fingernails. It's a very similar thing.
Yeah.
It's really the same material fundamentally. Biologically, it's the same kind of material. Protein strands. Esav was born hairy, right? Esav achi ish se'ar, right? And what does Esav get? What's his mountain? What's his zone? Har Seir, right?
David as well. David as well.
Right, and then there's Torah there now for now, but because David and Esav, the red hair, I could be here all night, but there's a lot. I'm being makasser. Anyways, the Maisa, it's a very, very deep concept, and the in the omkus of it is that Har Seir is always keneged Har Habayis, Har Moriah. Right, we say at the end of Pesukei Zimmer, right? There's Har Tzion, Lishpot. Hashem should arise, Lishpot to bring judgment to Har Seir, because Seir is demonic, which is the koch of the 11th. Last week's parsha, second pasuk. Anybody remember? From Har Sinai to Eretz Yisrael is how long? A march? 11 days, but only if you go next to Har Seir. But finish the pasuk, second pasuk in Devarim. It's 11 days from Har Sinai to Eretz Yisrael, derech Har Seir. Because once Seir is involved, once you're going past the demonic, it's automatically crucial to the number 11 and the extraneous force. Esav is extraneous. Esav is like us. Yishmaelim were cast off. Esav has a tefisa, has landed out to Israel. He has this place. He has this connection with us. He's a brother to Yaakov. He's in utero with Yaakov. It's not like Yishmael, half brother epis here. Hey, listen, Syria now, whatever. Esav is with us.
He's a twin.
He's a twin, right? The hairy twin in the womb, and therefore the aspect of Esav is like the 11th. If Klal Yisrael is 10 from Noach to Avram, so Esav is like an 11th force. And so just to be makatzer, the Inyan of 11 in everything I've just said pertains to why there are 11 ingredients in Ketorets. Ketorets is built to confront the demonic realm on its own grounds. In other words, the Ketorets is built from 11 spices, 10 of which are the essential workup of 10 spheros, of 10, all which 10 is in macrocosmic summary of all reality. And there's an 11th ingredient, which is superfluous, seemingly.
You went by it very quickly, but isn't Yitzchak the 11th?
Yitzchak is... No, because
you just said up to Abraham.
It's true, but the goal is to bring out of Abraham, dafka him. His soul was an upgrade. In other words, he was a quantum leap in his spiritual makeup, and then from him is like a home stretch, a last mile to extract from his kedusha and refine his kedusha rather into Klal Yisrael. Yaakov is the first person for whom all of his children are Jewish, even Dinah. Everyone who leaves his progeny is Jewish. Which is Kedushas Yisrael, which was not true for Esav, and regarding Esav vis-a-vis Yitzchak, Kedushas Yaakov, Kedushas Yisrael, and the answer to my just doing makasser to make time for the main attraction. The Ketorets has 11 ingredients for this reason, and this pertains to the tikkun of Ketorets, that when it's turned to ash, when it's obliterated, it has its tikkun. In other words, there's no Indian to take the 11th and elevate it, but to destroy all 11 at once. And in its destruction, that is in fact its tikkun, to confront demonic forces. And that's why it has the power, like Zohar said, to mamash shatter the Yetzer Hara. And the Arizal explains, and I mean I'll say the Kli Yakar first, but the Kli Yakar explains what's coming up for all of us in 2 days: a Tainus Tzibor, Yom Kippur, Tisha B'Av. On Tisha B'Av, right? Everyone fasts. The Gemara in Krisa says there's a mitzvah that it's not even a real fast. It doesn't have the taste of a real Jewish fast, unless every single Jew is included, including Jews who have a bad smell, Jews who aren't so ayayay in their behavior. And these Jews are seemingly superfluous. Says the Gemara, just like that Jew is superfluous, seemingly, he's like the chalbana, this less nice smelling ingredient, which is the 11th, the external.
When you cook it together,
when it's included with the other 10 and it's integrated, then the whole thing is changed into one hefza, one embodiment of Ketorets, which has its power. And therefore, certain Jews have all kinds of things which don't permit them to join a minyan, perhaps. It's a whole lot of halacha. Certain Jews, by dint of their behavior, are not countable for a minyan, or for an Erev, break an Erev. There's a whole line of halakha discussion. But those Jews are dafka the ones that might not count for a minyan, but are needed to make the fast a fast. So they can't count for the count of the 11 initial ingredients of the Ketorets, as it were, but they can be connected to the 11th ingredient and brought in. And by the inclusion and integration of that 11th ingredient, it purifies the entire system. And anything which is demonic, all which those Jews might do to increase the demonic forces in the world, is neutralized by dint of their inclusion.
You're saying those Jews are demonic?
They provide food they provide food for the power of a Jew is that, as the Ramban told us in his parish on Achrei Mos, that Klal Yisrael has the distinction, the power, the privilege, the wherewithal to give food to the demonic realm by way of the soul of the goat sent to its dispatch on Har Azazel. And the other side of the coin is that a Jew's misdeeds can also give food in a different and destructive way to demonic forces. But by way of that Jew's inclusion in Klal Yisrael, the koyach of the entire system together, not that he's schlepped in and the good Jews are making him better, it's that his inclusion is part of a whole new thing called Ketorets. And the Arizal says differently. The Arizal says that the Levona is actually the Makif. He has a whole cheshbon there, which is not for now. But I will explain that this finally answers our question. Bekitzer Nimratz, that why do the goats sneeze on Har Michvar? Because the Ketorets, the 11 ingredients of the Ketorets, in their incineration upon the coals of the fig, which are a remez, a deep remez, in Panemius Tika remez, a connection to the first sin of humanity. When the spices of the Ketorets hit that fig coal and go poof into smoke, that smoke wafts out of Eretz Yisrael. That smoke of the 11 ingredients transcends the 10 zones, Mishum Kalim in the first parak, transcends the 10 zones of Eretz Yisrael and departs Eretz Yisrael and goes into Chutz La'aretz. Michvar is over the border in Chutz La'aretz. It's in the 11th zone, which is a place of externality, of makif around Eretz Yisrael. And there it confronts a goat, a seir. The demonic is confronted by the Ketorets and makes the goat sneeze. It doesn't kill the goat. It can even transform the goat. And
it's a good.
It's a good. The way Klal Yisrael gives food, gives nourishment, the paycheck, as it were, to the prosecuting attorney on Yom Kippur. The goal is not to destroy, but to transform. And that's what happens. And that's what happens internally within the Ketorets when we have a system of 10, which brings in and is able to integrate that 11th. And that's for all of us in our lives. That the opposite of kedusha is disintegration, and that kedusha is when things are integrated. So we often think of Kedusha as being like holiness or being separate. We have notions of what Kedusha are, and they're all true. But fundamentally, Kedusha is when there's an extraneous force which could be destructive, and we schlep it in, we bring it in, and use it in and of itself to transform the internal system, the Kedusha of 10. And the integration brings Kedusha to the entire system. I'll finish with one point, which I mentioned before, and that's that a Kohen who brings Ketorets has a segula for wealth. To be rich, right? Lo Shana Bey, a Kohen who brought Ketorets once in his life, morning or afternoon, one day, he was off the roster. He was no longer in the drawing for Ketorets ever again in his life. Why? Because that was a segula to get rich. How is that? What's the kesher? What's the kata? How does that work? Gemara Basra says that when Job was suffering with all of his afflictions, he asked Hashem, Derech like Melitza, he said, maybe a wind blew through my name Eov and turned my name Eov into Oyev, enemy. That, God, I'm your enemy. You're doing this to me. Why is it happening to me? What did I do wrong? I'm now your enemy. That wind is the kedusha of the Rala Sha'arim, the 231 gates, the wherewithal for Hashem to deconstruct the letters of creation, the osios, the letters which are the constructs, the metaphysical building blocks of all of reality, to deconstruct and reconstruct. This is a major part of Kabbalah. If you want to build a golem, this is where you start. And it's a major part of Pneumis Torah. And therefore, if we see Seir is the demonic, if you, as it were, blow a wind through Seir, the demonic, Seir gets turned around into Ashir, which means rich. Eser, 10. So that the koyach of Ketorets, the 11 ingredients, when it's transformed and brought as an offering in a fitting way by a Kohen, it transforms Seir into Ashir and brings Kedusha of integration from 11 to Eser, which is 10, Ayin Sin Reish. And that's the Kedusha of Ketorets. But Kitzer and Nimratz, my goal in all this, of course, as I said before, was to encourage us that when we learn, say the Ketorets at the very beginning before davening, Yaakov Endin says twice a day, Halavai twice a day, maybe thrice a day. The Rizal talks about it at length. Everything I'm saying you can find Beremez in the Shar Kavanos when he talks about Ketorets in the morning. It's a very big deal, and that even reading it provides an ordinary Jew who is not a Kohen with all the benefits which we said a Kohen gets, that Klal Yisrael gets, that the universe gets when a Kohen places those actual Ketorets upon the fire. And by counting out, by providing physical activity to our thoughts and our speech. When we say the Ketorets, we actually have kavanah for the Ketorets, and what we're talking about, to learn about it in Be'iyun, as we're going to do right now. As well, we think about it, we talk about it in Shul, we say the Ketorets, and then if we can provide for the Ketorets a physical activity in Ma'aseh, and count out the ingredients on our fingers, that brings the Kedusha of the Ketorets through the worlds from thought to speech to action. And Halavai would be Zocha, if not this Tisha B'Av, certainly,
Why not this Tisha B'Av?
tomorrow, before Tisha B'Av. Halavai, tomorrow morning, first thing, first light, a Ketorah
Wake
Koil.
up in the middle of the night time.
Chaim.